Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of how to create your first D&D character. Now, in my last video, we talked about the first sheet of your classic D&D character, which kind of covers some stats and all of the statistics and numbers of your character and how they fit into the rules and numbers of the game. But in today's video, part 2, we're going to be covering the second page of a D&D character sheet, which is more of the personality and creative side of the character, which kind of makes it a little harder to teach. It may be easy to explain different formulas to find different values of statistics for your character, but it's a little bit harder to teach you how to create a good backstory or a good personality for your character. So I'm going to be giving a lot of examples in today's video. Now, before we get into today's video, there were a few things which I kind of forgot to cover in part 1, so I'm just going to quickly go back over those things which I forgot about. So I want to clarify the ability score modifiers for your 6 core ability scores: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. You add the modifiers to any roll which you make for that ability score. For example, if you're rolling for how well you socialize with a noble, then you would roll a charisma check and add your charisma ability score modifier. Now, the next thing which I kind of forgot to cover was where you get all of these defining skill modifiers and ability scores and all of that stuff. Well, those generally come from your race and your class. All of your abilities, all of your skills, all of your special modifiers and strengths all come from either your race or your class, except for a few exceptions like armor class. Armor class does come from your dexterity modifier, but it also comes from the inventory which you buy, the stuff which you have on your person. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into part 2 of how to create your first D&D character. Welcome to D20 in Disguise. Alright, so let's jump right into the top left corner of the second page. Now, as per usual, I will have a link in the description to a PDF form of the custom D&D character template, which I personally use, but it will also be on screen as I go through it in this video. So, you can see on the top left there, once again we have character name. Now, if you haven't watched part 1, firstly, I would highly suggest to go back to it. There will also be a link in the description to part 1. However, character name, your character name, is the name of your character which you're going to be playing in this fantasy world. For example, perhaps I'm running a Dwarven character, a Dwarven barbarian, let's say. So, let's think of a name for this Dwarven barbarian. How about something like Udrin Skullcracker, okay? So, or Udrin Skullbreaker. That would be the character name. To the right of that we have age, height, weight, eyes, skin, hair. Those are just the visual appearance of your D&D character. Age, pretty straightforward. However, you should take into account the average age of your race. If you don't have a copy of the Player's Handbook, I would highly suggest it. It goes over the different races, their average ages, eye colors, skin colors, heights, weights, all that stuff. So you don't have to guesstimate on it, but it's not really necessary if you don't have a copy of the Player's Handbook. Just pick a general age, pick a general height, weight, eye color, skin color, hair color, and you're good to go. Usually that stuff doesn't matter very much in-game. It really transfers over to your character appearance, your character portrait, which we're going to be covering next. Now you can see you kind of have a box there, kind of like a frame, which you could draw your character, draw a portrait of your character's face or appearance. Now this could range from scribbles to a very intricately designed sketch, but don't feel bad if it's nothing super impressive. It's just a tool to get across the general look of your character. So moving on to the right here, we have these 4 little boxes: personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Now this may seem like, oh, I can just choose whatever I want for this. But in D&D, your background and all of that stuff is very specific. Now, the background is actually covered on the first page of your D&D character sheet, right below player name. And I kind of skipped that part 1 because it ties more into the second page than the first page. So if you have a copy of the Player's Handbook on you, I would highly suggest turning to page 125 with me, and we'll look over the different D&D backgrounds. Now, much like your race and your class, the background of your character adds different skills, proficiencies, languages, and other things onto your character. So it's an important thing to have. To kind of explain what a background exactly is, I'm going to quote the Player's Handbook. Quote, "Every story has a beginning. Your character's background reveals where you came from, how you became an adventurer, and your place in the world. Your fighter may have been a courageous knight or a grizzled soldier. Your wizard could have been a sage or an artisan. Your rogue might have gotten by as a guild thief, or commanded audiences as a jester. Choosing a background provides you with important story cues about your character's identity. The most important question to ask about your background is what changed? Why did you stop doing whatever your background describes and start adventuring? Where did you get the money to purchase your starting gear? Or, if you come from a wealthy background, why don't you have more money? How did you learn the skills of your class? What sets you apart from ordinary people who share your background?" So as you can see, it's kind of like a second class, but like a pre-class. It's something which your character did before, but now they've moved on to their actual class and have become an adventurer. So I'm just going to list out the pre-made backgrounds provided in the Player's Handbook. So we have Acolyte, or a religious person. We have Charlatan, which is essentially a very social person, more of a generalization. Then we have Criminal, pretty straightforward. We have Entertainer, Folk Hero, Guild Artisan, Hermit, Noble, Outlander, Sage, Sailor, Soldier, and Urchin. So as you can see, much like your class, these are very broad generalizations, but they work very well. For example, Urchin, which means kind of like a street dweller, that could be an interesting backstory. You could really play off of that and really develop your character's personality. Or Hermit, you lived in isolation before. What drove you to become an adventurer and be around people again? What happened? As it's said in the Player's Handbook, there has to be a change. What changed? What happened? What initiated that change? And that's what is really interesting about your D&D background. It's kind of like a class, but honestly more personality driven. Your class is just an occupation, a set of skills which you have. While your background, well, that's much more story driven. Now let's get back to the second page with your personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. So if you can look in the Player's Handbook with me, you can see that with each of these backgrounds, it has a personality trait, D8, ideal, D6, bond, D6, and flaw, D6. All of these different tables for pre-made personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Now, of course, if you want to look through these and then create your own, that's fine. But for your first D&D character, I would highly suggest choosing a background which fits your character and the backstory which you want for them, and then just rolling on the table or just looking through and choosing one which you like from those pre-made tables. It's a very useful thing for your first few D&D characters. So let's say, for example, we have a character and we want them to be a hermit. We want them to have the background hermit. So we're going to go ahead and turn over to page, let's see here, 134, page 134, and we can see skill proficiencies, medicine and religion, tool proficiencies, herbalism kit, languages, one of your choice, equipment, a scroll case stuffed full of notes from your studies or prayers, a winter blanket, a set of common clothes, an herbalism kit, and 5 gold pieces. So it kind of adds some stuff to your inventory, to your skills, and to your proficiencies. And then we can see underneath it, we can see life of seclusion. What was the reason for your isolation? And what changed to allow you to end your solitude? Just like what I was talking about earlier. You can work with your DM to determine the exact nature of your seclusion, or you can choose a roll on the table below to determine the reason behind your seclusion. And that is very good advice. If you have a GM to walk you through your first character, making your first character, do that. Highly suggested. If you have an actual GM which is willing to help you through the character process for your first time, do that. It's good to have a person which can answer any questions which you have. But this is the next best thing. So let's go ahead and look through these 8 different options which they've given you for the reasons of your seclusion. 1. I was searching for spiritual enlightenment. 2. I was partaking of communal living in accordance with the dictates of a religious order. 3. I was exiled for a crime I didn't commit. 4. I retreated from society after a life-altering event. 5. I needed a quiet place to work on my art, literature, music, or manifesto. 6. I needed to commune with nature far from civilization. 7. I was the caretaker of an ancient ruin or relic. 8. I was a pilgrim in search for a person, place, or relic of spiritual significance. So as you can see, these 8 different options really outline some different options to really add some depth to your background. Why did you go into a life of seclusion? And then decide from that reason why you went in to that secluded lifestyle, why you came out of that secluded lifestyle, because that's also very important in this example. And then we have a feature discovery. You probably add that in your features and traits. As I said, it adds features, traits, abilities, all of that stuff. But then we have suggested characteristics and personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. This is what goes in the 4 boxes on the second page. Now, if you're making your first character, I would suggest choosing 1 of each. But if you want to balance it out, you could even choose 2 or 3 of each. Now, 3 is really stretching it, especially with flaws. The flaws in D&D tend to be a bit more extreme. If you want to choose 3 less extreme flaws and put them together, that's a good idea. But what I personally suggest is looking through these tables, or talking with your GM, and deciding on 1 personality trait, 1 bond, 1 ideal, and 1 flaw. Let's go ahead and read through these tables and the options it lays out for you, starting with personality traits. 1. I've been isolated for so long that I rarely speak, preferring gestures and the occasional grunt. 2. I'm utterly serene, even in the face of disaster. 3. The leader of my community had something wise to say on every topic, and I'm eager to share that wisdom. 4. I feel tremendous empathy for all who suffer. 5. I'm oblivious to etiquette and social expectations. 6. I connect everything that happens to me to a grand, cosmic plan. 7. I often get lost in my own thoughts and contemplation, becoming oblivious to my surroundings. 8. I'm working on a grand philosophical theory and love sharing my ideas. So as you can see, your personality trait really, as the name implies, fleshes out your personality. How you're going to play that character at the table. For example, if we were to choose option 4, I feel tremendous empathy to all who suffer. That would really affect how you play your character in certain situations. For example, if you saw any suffering whatsoever, even the suffering of your enemies, you'd feel empathy toward them, therefore perhaps sparing them. So this really contributes to how you play your character at the table. So going on down to the ideal table, we can see for some reason at the end of this, it has in parentheses 1 word. We can see good, lawful, chaotic, evil, neutral, any. These are simple suggestions which, based on your alignment, which we covered in part 1, but this really portrays to your alignment. For example, if you had a true neutral character, the suggested ideal would be live and let live. Meddling in the affairs of others only causes trouble. Now, ideals in general kind of mean what you live for in life, what you fight for in life. Like, for example, greater good, logic, free thinking, power. All of those things would be what you would live for in life, possibly, or what you would fight for in life. Next, we have bonds. Now, bonds are kind of things which you hold higher than everything else, and you really cherish. Or they could be kind of very important moments in your life as well. Let's just go ahead and list off the 6 different options which it is given you in the pre-made table. 1. Nothing is more important than the other members of my hermitage, order, or association. 2. I entered seclusion to hide from the ones who might still be hunting me. I must someday confront them. 3. I'm still seeking the enlightenment I pursued in my seclusion, and it still eludes me. 4. I entered seclusion because I love someone I could not have. 5. Should my discovery come to light, it could bring ruin to the entire world. 6. My isolation gave me great insight into a great evil that only I can destroy. As you can see there, these things are either very defining moments in your character's life, kind of end goals, defining moments, or something which they hold higher than everything else in life. Like, for example, 6th option, my isolation gave me great insight into a great evil that only I can destroy. That's kind of an end goal. And that also affects how you play this character at the table. If your character at the table gets a chance to take hold of that goal and complete it, they will take that chance, even if it means maybe even the death of the entire party, depending on the character. Next, moving on down to flaws. Now, flaws, pretty straightforward. It's just a negative quirk of your character's personality, which could possibly mean bad things. Let's go ahead and list the 6 pre-made options. 1. Now that I've returned to the world, I enjoy its pleasures a little too much. 2. I harbor dark, bloodthirsty thoughts that my isolation and meditation failed to quell. 3. I'm dogmatic in my thoughts and philosophy. 4. I let my need to win arguments overshadow friendships and harmony. 5. I'd risk too much to uncover a lost bit of knowledge. 6. I like keeping secrets and won't share them with anyone. Now, as you can see, depending on the situation and your flaw, it could really mean some bad things. And that really adds some group dynamic. If it ends up that you have that 6th flaw, you really like keeping secrets and won't tell anybody a secret, and you need to tell somebody a secret, or it could mean the end of the entire party, or the end of the entire world, or whatever, something really bad, then the rest of the players and the rest of the characters are going to have to work around that, which may seem a bit like metagaming, but I think of it as a very interesting team-building exercise, and it's kind of puzzle-solving exercise, even. Alright, so next, now that we have personality traits, bonds, ideals, and flaws all done, all of that background-associated stuff, we're going to move on over to the right there, onto allies and organizations. Now, this is pretty simple. This ties very much into your backstory. It essentially means what different organizations and what kind of allies do you have from the past or present. If your character was the member of an organization a few years back, that would be an organization which you probably put there. Or maybe they were a member of a late adventuring party. You would also put that there. Those are possible allies which they could call upon in a time of need. So moving on down from there, we have other proficiencies in languages. Already covered that on the first page in part 1. Would highly suggest you watch it if you haven't already. But we're going to move on over to background. Going to skip background. Already covered what background was. It's essentially just another class, but it's a class which your character did in the past. A lot more personality driven than statistics driven. Moving on down to character backstory. Pretty self-explanatory. Your backstory is the story of your character's past. For example, a character which I created, named Fendin Segrid, used to be an alleged military commander until he was incapacitated by a wyvern and honorably discharged. That really adds to their personality, that really adds to how you play them, and it determines the character's background, which in that case would be soldier. So let's move to the right there onto stowed items. Now stowed items could mean a few things. It could either mean what you're carrying in a bag, what you're carrying in a backpack, what you're carrying in a bag of holding, which is hard to keep track of. Or it could mean your assets. Perhaps you have a small coastal cottage. What's in that cottage? Is there some furniture? Is there money? What all is in that cottage? What kind of assets do you own? And I think that's about it. I know part 2, this part, was a bit shorter than last part, but I was kind of expecting it to be, because it takes a little bit longer to explain numbers than to explain creative stuff like this, because this creative stuff, this second page, stuff included on this, is very open-ended. You can create whatever you want. And that's why D&D is so great. That's why creating your first D&D character is so great. The possibilities are endless. You want to have a charlatan barbarian? Sure, go for it. That honestly sounds kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm gonna stop being all passionate and nerdy and stuff, and I'm gonna go on my little YouTube spiel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If this is your first time playing D&D or creating your D&D character, I would love to see that kind of comment in the comment section that, wow, this helped so much. I'm actually creating my first D&D character, and I understand things a lot better. Those kind of comments really make my day, guys, and it really helps build the community, and it really keeps me going as well, because I love doing this stuff. It's such a great time to spend time with friends and get creative. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day. Keep on creating, and I will see you in the next video.